Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Radiator Arms, the podcast which isn't afraid to hold on to the past. Hello, I see you're recording a podcast. Would you like some help? Clippy. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the fact that for our generation, there don't seem to be all that many cars that everybody can relate to. And we're going to be asking if that's because people just don't have pride in their car anymore. Enjoy. So today you find us in the reduced format of myself, James, aka JayEmm of JayEmm on Cars, and to my left, the man today without the cans, it's Will the Plank.
Hello, everybody.
And we hope you're all having a wonderful time. And you've probably noticed it's getting a little bit cooler. Halloween is basically here, which means Bonfire Night will not be far behind. And then we'll all be talking about the C word, which is to be the focus of an upcoming podcast. But we want to do that with Ant, who unfortunately today is not able to make us on account of once again coming down with a case of old bastarditis. But there is something we need to do, which is somewhat time sensitive. Will, I've bought you a present.
Thank you, James.
You're very welcome. Would you like to open it?
Yes. Well, for those who are in Radioland, I'm looking at a kind of medium-sized box.
About a foot in each dimension,
Yes.
isn't it? Yeah.
And it has some paw prints. Did you draw those?
No, the good lady wife drew those.
Oh, okay. Oh, they look excellent. I assume they're from your cats.
Yes, and with the heartfelt and touching message.
Yes, to Will, Merry Christmas or Happy Birthday or whatever this is, XXX.
Yeah.
Right, let's open this bat.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is the sound of the crystal glass set flying towards the floor.
Yeah, I dropped that.
You dropped it, didn't you?
That's a thing I'd do. What an effing cretin.
Luckily, as you will see, it will have survived.
What is this? What is this? Sparko Performance? Is this a helmet?
It is indeed.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, we need one of these because we're doing a lot of stuff on the track this coming year, aren't we?
We are indeed, and you can stop borrowing mine. Now, give it a whirl, just see if it works for you. I picked this up when I went and visited Demon Tweaks the other day, who are based just outside Wrexham. I didn't know that. Very long way away from our studio.
Okay, I'm going to have to pull the mic away for a second.
Yep, I will describe now for those that are listening what is going on. Will is taking off his glasses. He's lining up his shot. He is peeling open the protective fabric bag of the brand new lovely Sparker helmet.
Which I just dropped.
Yeah, which you just dropped.
Oh, it's an open face one. Oh,
It is an
very
open
nice.
face one. I thought particularly to get started, that would be the best thing for you, and then you could buy your own full face. Also, open face that you get a little bit less sweaty in them. They're quite nice. So, with luck, because I tested it based on my own. If it doesn't fit you, I'll use it because it does fit me. Yeah, you're not used to helmets, are you? You've pulled all the straps in with you.
No, yeah.
Okay, all right. You put it on. You got to hold these out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because otherwise you need these to then secure
Yes.
it. So hold those out and then push head through here.
Push it through here. Hang on.
It's obviously it is meant to be. Don't throw it at the floor again. It is meant to be a little on
my
the snug side.
Yeah, my ears are definitely folded, but
Yeah. Okay. Is that a bit too tight for you? Because if it is, I'll keep that one and I'll buy you a size up. You can get your glasses on there though.
I can get my glasses. I mean, I think it's okay.
We can work it out.
What do you reckon?
To be honest, it looks about right. Is your head nice and snugly in it and everything?
It feels snugly in it. It feels like I'm going to have... Hang on. Okay, I've got my microphone back. It feels nice and snug in it. It feels like I might have some helmet head, you know, after some helmet hair, but that's fine.
Yeah, no, that's great. And there is a little like cap for it as well that attaches onto the front.
Excellent.
It looks very sexy. But yeah, that's a nice one. And it's also Hans device compatible.
Ooh, I don't know what that is.
Hans, a head and neck support. That's the thing that race drivers and that wear, which to be honest, I am going to buy myself a Hans this year because I think it's quite important. Safety first and all that.
No, that's lovely. Thank you very much, James.
You're very welcome. I thought you needed one of those of your own.
Yes, I do. This helmet needs a helmet.
Right, take that off. I'm not doing the rest of the podcast with you in your bash hat.
I mean, I was thinking about it.
Yeah. It
is tight, but I suppose that's what you need when it comes.
Yeah,
to
you don't want it to be overly tight, so we'll look into it. And in the worst case scenario, I will keep that one because it fits me nicely. I based it on the fact that I knew you wore my helmet previously, and I even got a size up. But problem is, over time, the helmet manufacturers do change sizes, and it's a different style of lid as well. So, and we may have different shaped heads.
I do. My head is full of fluff.
Whimsy.
Exactly. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. That's a very kind gift that will keep me alive in the case of me binning something.
That is the hope. Obviously, try not to bin the car in the first
Well,
place.
that is generally the plan. How am I looking? Is my hair looking fine?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Excellent. Thank you.
Very sleek.
Well, what can I say? It's what I try to do best. While we're here, shall we have our Archers moment?
Oh, yes, let's.
Can of pets. Right. Enough frolicking.
Yes.
Let's get on to the hard topic.
Yes, of cars.
Of cars.
Now, this has been inspired by the fact that of late we have been spending a lot of time with minis.
Oh, yes.
Now, up until now, what's your experience of minis been?
My experience of minis has mostly been the one my wife had, which was the third generation BMW F56 platform.
Yep.
She had a Mini 1, which was a 3-door hatchback with 6-speed manual, and it had about 100 horsepower on its little 3-cylinder 1.2 litre engine.
1.2?
1.2, yeah. Because it's a weird thing. The early ones, their Mini 1s, weren't just the 1.5 that with reduced power. It was actually a smaller engine.
Sleeve down.
Yeah, it was. So 1.2, and I had a lot of fun with that, actually. It was a bigger car than the Minis we've been driving, which made it better for kind of daily duties and things like that, perhaps. And me being quite tall and not the most slender man in the world, it did help me fit in. And I enjoyed it. The gearbox was nice. The way it drove was pretty nice. I just always wanted a bit more power out of that. But it did mean if you keeping your momentum going, you could...
Was it even a turbo?
It was a 3-cylinder turbo.
That just seems so odd. I mean, in my head, what I'd have thought they'd have done is had the 1.5, but just made do without the turbo. But I guess that's probably made life more complicated.
What they later did, I think, was just the 1.5 detuned because people could remap the lower 1.5s to that. In fact, you could even remap the 1.2 because it had the same turbo and other bits on. I looked into this, can you tell? Because it was a little bit slow. My wife didn't mind, though. She wasn't that bothered.
And how much power did it have?
About 102 horsepower.
Yeah, and they were getting bigger by then. They were getting a bit heavier. So
they were, though I have to say, it is a platform I do like as an overall kind of daily usable package. The F56, I enjoyed that. It's a car we do actually miss. But recently, it's been that missing of that car for me anyway has been completely overwritten by my love for the R53 platform now.
Which for those who don't speak Mini, that is the very first one of the BMW era. So I think it was launched in 2000.
Yes.
Went into production, I think, later that year, maybe 2001, and then went up until 2006. And to be honest, it's got quite a few different names because it depends on whether you're talking about the regular one or either talking about the Cooper or you're talking about the convertible. But it's R50, R52. I think R53 is kind of that generation. Then in 2006, it's a facelift, isn't it?
Yes.
I think that's what we should call it. Although there is technically also a facelift of this one in 2003.
Yes.
But there was a big change. And then it became the R56, most people know it as. And that's when the engines changed from the either naturally aspirated or supercharged ones, as we've got in the Cooper S, to the either, I think those
they were naturally aspirated and turbocharged, and they were the worst engines in existence ever.
Yeah. I think they were actually built in Britain then, weren't they? I think that was the whole point. But they were was it the Prince engine?
It was the Prince. I think it was a Peugeot and some other kind of
It's a PSA BMW, it's a hateful engine. It's notorious. In whatever car it goes into, it's considered.
So I remember,
to be
I'm
a
pretty
weak
sure the
point.
same engine was in the 207 GTI and the Citroen DS3s and things
Yeah.
like that, and
Yeah.
they would all end up failing and just being very weak, which is a shame because when they're working, they're actually all right engines to drive.
They're brilliant. Honestly, I had one of the most fun times on track ever behind the wheel of a Mini GP2, so the hottest version of that generation. And it was an absolutely soaking wet Silverstone. And ordinarily, a Mini of any description at Silverstone is just going to be eaten alive because it's a power track. Like, you cannot get away from the fact it is a big boy circuit and you need a lot of go. Even in the E92 M3 that I've been tooling around in a lot of late, like, it will feel slow around a track like Silverstone. You need huge power to make it feel quick. It's just so wide and so flat. It's a Formula One track, right? But in the wet, and I also had an instructor, which is like a cheat code for track days, right? You could just do things that other cars couldn't. And all of a sudden, your power deficit wasn't really a problem because if you had more power, you'd have struggled to put it down anyway. And it was great. I was going past like 911s, GTRs, all sorts of stuff. It was fantastic. I loved it. And then I got out of that into a Ginetta Junior, which I absolutely hated. It was honestly, because the Mini, as it's a road car, you just felt like you could just go around all day. Like, it was absolutely fine. The Ginetta, that was a gym session. Like, after 20 minutes in the Ginetta, you get out and you are knackered. More challenging by design, but a lot of fun. So, yeah, great cars. And then, was it about 2011 or so the F56 comes in?
2014.
2014. Okay, crikey, yeah, quite a while. And the big change for those, I remember, is that the car got bigger, but it got bigger in a really unusual way because they kind of extended the wheelbase. And with the early cars, you get in it and the windscreen is like right in front of you. The dash feels like it's, a few inches long. That's it. And then you get into the F56 and all of a sudden it feels like somebody's just taken the windscreen and just pushed it forwards by like 6 inches, which is basically exactly what they've done, I think, to meet new crash regs and everything else. And the big problem with that, it's still a very good car. And those are the ones where they started doing the Union Jack rear lights, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And some dubious marketing. Was it like maximum go-kart feel and rubbish like that? Anyway, nonsense. But in those, the side profile just isn't quite right anymore. Because you look at the originals, and I have to say, I think, hand on heart, the R53, the first generation BMW Mini, is the maybe one and only time a manufacturer has updated a car that's as iconic as the Mini and just got it absolutely right.
100%. 100%. Renault are coming close with the 5 as well.
Yeah, the 5 is pretty good. Although, again, the Renault 5 just did not have the life of the Mini.
No, it did not. It did not. It isn't quite as iconic as the original Mini.
No, very few things are. I mean, I think really, in terms of the Mini, the only other things that come close would be the likes of the Beetle. And the less we say about the Beatles remakes, probably the better. I just think they just misunderstood the whole point of the car. And maybe it was a more difficult car to remake. Yeah, 2CV, again, iconic. And beyond that, like, I don't know,
What about the new Ford Puma? Do you not like that?
Oh, forget about that. Tell you what I have seen on the road, though, a few times recently. The Capri.
Is that another weird looking thing? I can't remember if I... Do you know what? This is the thing. I know I've seen it, but it obviously did so little for me. I can't remember what it looks like.
Just imagine the most faceless, bland, boring crossover you can imagine. EV, of course.
Yeah, that sounds about what I saw.
Yeah, that's a new Ford Capri.
Yeah.
And it had just the worst marketing gumph I have ever seen in my entire life. I found this piece from Ford themselves, and they were trying to make out that it was really exciting and dynamic because it had standard fit ADAS and only a car as daring and bold as the Capri would be sold in yellow. And it's like, oh man, you guys are clutching at straws and then some. Like, oh my word. I mean, look, turning the Capri into an EV crossover was always going to be, I think, a little bit of a hard sell with the diehards, but my life. That's sometimes the marketing department does stuff and you're like, could you not? Please.
Here's the question. Is the car itself any good, or is it just being penalised the fact that it's got the Capri name and it's nothing like the original Capri? Same with the Puma.
I genuinely don't know. Under the skin, it is actually VW platform.
Oh, okay, yeah, that sounds like Ford and VW are very much in bed these days, aren't they?
They are. Which, do you know what? That worries me. And that worries me because they are two titans of the world, right? They're two huge, huge companies. You know, I don't think there's anywhere out there where people haven't heard of either Ford or Volkswagen. And the fact that they now feel that they have to collaborate on the EV thing is kind of terrifying. Like, look, because VW already have multiple brands across which they can, you know, spread their platform. So they develop one platform, and if they wanted to, they could put it, you know, in everything from a Seat to a Bentley, you know, or a Porsche or whatever. But with Ford, you would just like to think that there are just enough cars out there that they're selling that they can develop their own. Now, I will say, from having spoken to lots of people involved in the industry, what Ford actually do is take the VW platforms and make them better, which is not how you'd think it would be. You'd think it might be the other way around. But no, apparently Ford work to really very high standards. And from a technical standpoint, they're excellent cars.
Well, I remember when the, I think it's the fourth generation now, Volkswagen Caddy came out, because for those who don't know, I had a 2008 VW Caddy van. I used to have a Transport back in the day in 1997 T4, so I've always loved Volkswagen vans. And when the Caddy came out based on the Ford platform, there was so much uproar from people in like the owners groups and things like that. And it started to quickly die down after people drove them and realised, actually, they're all right cars. Yes, they do look like a Transit Connect in some way, but they drive pretty decently.
Yeah, I always felt a little bit bad for the Jaguar X-Type, because the major complaint leveled against it was the fact it's a Mondeo in a pretty outfit. But the Mondeo of that generation was a brilliant car.
Yeah.
You know, I just...
That was third generation Mondeo, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think so. And I tell you what, I remember going back in 2013 to test drive those as one of my first cars after passing my test. It was like some 500 quid one, diesel with 220,000. In fact, the only reason I didn't buy it is because there wasn't any room in the budget to put some new front tyres on. It needed new front tyres, and I was that skint at the time that was the reason I didn't buy the car, because I couldn't afford new tyres. But driving it was actually pretty good, and that was a high mileage one. From memory, I just remember thinking, this feels really solid for the age and the mileage. It's about 10 years old then, and yeah, in some respects, I kind of do wish I'd bought that and just, you know, maybe waited for a bit and got some more money in for the tyres or something. But yeah, they were a good car, and I think as well with the X-Type is there wasn't actually that many parts or as many parts as people think shared with it. I think a lot of them were still Jaguar-owned parts anyway and bespoke to the vehicle. So it's like...
It's a good-looking car.
Yeah.
You could get it with all-wheel drive. Do you know what? I think actually the mistake that they made was that they were so keen, I think, to distance it from Ford. When it came out, you could only get it, I think, with a four-wheel drive and like a 3-litre V6 or something like that. They didn't do an economical 4-cylinder diesel option, which is basically what the fleet market wanted. Because the thing is, again, you got to remember, this is like 20-odd years ago. There would have been so many people out there who had been driving Mondeos who would have loved to have had a Jag, but they had to make the numbers work for the company purchaser. And if you're going to drop from like 45 to 30 mpg, it ain't happening.
Yeah, it took them a little while for them to bring in the 2-litre diesel options, didn't it?
Yeah, far too long. By the time they brought it in, I think people had already bought something else, and then the car did have a couple of issues which didn't help it, and it sold well. I think it's 400,000 cars or something like that.
Yeah, there's still a sight you see semi-regularly these days.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good car. But anyway, as Ant's not here to bring us back on track, I'll have to do it for us. The Capri, though, is one of the cars I wanted to talk about because, you see, for people of our generation, I was born in 89 and you were born in...
91.
91, okay, so pretty similar age. So you're basically the same age as my sister. And for our generation, I think we were probably the last where growing up, I think nearly everybody that I knew in my class got a driving license. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Because, either we lived outside of town or we lived close enough to the outside of town that you wanted your freedom anyway. And I think there were very few people in my class who didn't get a driving license. And what was so great back then is that it didn't actually feel to me like this was an issue of affordability either, because I think it was just viewed as a necessity by most people. Where we lived in the countryside, we grew up in Bury St Edmunds, and it did have some public transport links. They did exist, but a lot of my friends, they lived in little villages which didn't have buses, or ones that were so infrequent you couldn't rely upon them. And if you wanted to go various places, particularly if as a student you wanted to go there late at night, you had to drive, right? You did not have a choice. So you either got a car, or a few of us wound up getting motorbikes. I got a bike first and then a car later. But getting your license back then, all right, it did take a little while, but it wasn't horrendous. It wasn't too difficult. How many tries did you take?
First time pass for 3 minors.
Git. I was fourth. No, sorry, that's fourth for my motorbike, a second for my car.
Okay.
Well,
I got 2 of my minors in the end of the car park.
Oh, really?
Which is weird. One for some, I think, having to readjust my bay park, because I'll give you a little bit of kind of backstory. I started driving when I was 17 in 2008 as a learner. I had a car that had been bought for me, an old Rover 418 M821 RBM for anybody playing the game at home. And yeah, I had insurance on it, but I didn't really have the money at the time to pass tests, because I was just a young musician going out playing guitar and drinking and being irresponsible, because
you liquefied your assets.
I literally did. But I always spent my time working on the cars, still loved driving the cars. And then it got to a point in like 2013 where I was like, right, no, this is silly now. I'm 22 nearly. I need to pass my test. And to be fair, I passed my test within 3 months, but I'd already had so much driving experience beforehand, like way more than the average learner did, that I just had ways of doing things. And I was trying to do my bay park the way that the instructor wanted to do it. And I never really got on with his way. It was a bit weird and it wasn't going in right. So I said, I'm sorry, let me just do this my way. And I just kind of went in and straight away. And I was like, if I'd just done that in the first place, I would have never have got those 2 minors.
Well, the best thing, though, back then, I remember it very, very clearly, is that once you'd got your license, and I think most people managed to convince a parent or grandparent or other relative to help chip in to get their license, to get the car, that was cheap.
It was.
That was so cheap. I mean, I remember, never mind 500 quid, for 200 or 300 quid, you could find a car that maybe wasn't going to get through its next MOT, but had just scraped through one. Yeah. And, of course, you could get it with some tax on.
And that is a good example of the first car for myself I actually purchased after passing my test. That wasn't the older family/company van that I was using for a while, which was my Peugeot 106 T290 KVF, I think it was. Its name was Kyle, and that was because in various places on the car, and I think, you know, like those kind of mass protractor sets used to with the little sharp bit. Somebody had just, you know, scratched the word Kyle all over the car in random places, like underneath like one of the mirrors, on the roof, like in the boot. So I just called the car Kyle.
Did you own a serial killer's car?
I might have. But the car was £240. It had a couple of months MOT on it. I think I had to pay like £80 tax. But yeah, basically for not a lot of money, I got my first car, and the parts were so cheap on it as well back then. Like for the MOT, it needed a drive shaft and it needed a lower arm. The drive shaft was £20, the lower arm was £15. I fitted them, Didn't even bother getting it aligned, got it re-MOT and just drove the car for another 6-7 months with the cheap £10 tyre scrubbing itself out until I sold it to my mate Will for a couple £100 as well, something like that, because he had just binned his Peugeot 106. No, or was it Citroen Saxo? He'd binned one of his cars, being silly, as you do at that age, and needed a cheap motor. And that's when I just bought my first BMW as well. And that was only about £300.
I have never driven a Saxo.
Have you not?
I'm not. No.
What? You need to change that. Have you driven a 106?
Yeah, I've driven lorries.
Okay, so the 106 and the Saxos, they're
It's same thing,
essentially the same car, though there's just a different vibe about them when you get in them. I think the 106 is the better looking car, though I think the Saxo is the one that is more kind of like revered by people, because that really was the ultimate chav wagon. It would always be the cliche of a man who just passed his test going to pick up his 14-year-old girlfriend from McDonald's car park while the rear wheels are underneath trays and doing skids and handbrake skids. So yeah, you need to drive the ultimate chav wagon at some point.
Shame of a nation.
Exactly, the shame. We used to be a proper country. Maybe not.
No politics.
No politics. No politics. No, but the Saxos and the 106s, they were great cars for the money. And the things you could pick up as well is just you can't pick up £500 cars anymore.
Well, you can. It's just that when you do, your hand will sort of come up and the car will stay there.
Yeah, exactly. Not anything that's wrong. Some of that is inflation. I think some of that is just the fact that people are holding on to their cars much longer and changing them less because of what's coming out nowadays is not something, and bring this back to the topic, that I think people are that proud of for the price half the time.
Yeah, well, I think, people just buying cars, for cash, as it were, is quite an unusual thing now.
Yeah.
I just don't tend to see people doing it anymore. Whereas way back when, I think the only people that I knew who would have had, even a vaguely new car, my mum did on a couple of occasions, and my dad did sometimes, but they were mostly company cars. I can only remember maybe once or twice Dad buying a new. I think it went like 10 years or something between buying new cars, like for him,
Yeah.
And yeah, there was company stuff in there as well, and it was pretty nice stuff. But everyone else that I knew, we had either hand-me-down cars if you're a youngster, or you just went and bought something. Like my granddad had, I'm pretty sure, an old Cavalier. Everybody just had something like that. And yeah, if you had £500-600, you were getting yourself a properly solid, decent car that would do the job really well, and you didn't need to spend any more than that. Especially if you were cheeky and you managed to get the holy grail was the car with 11 months MOT.
Yes.
If it had 11 months MOT and even better, 3 or 4 months tax left on it. Oh, that's so good.
It was back in the days when Bangonomics were really viable. It was, the tax on the car came with it, because it was in 2014, I think, when it changed over. And when you sold a car or bought a car, you had to tax it. It was no longer could be advertised with coming with ticket and test.
Yeah,
which is how it used to be. And yeah, that's how I'd bought cars before, with like 6 months tax on it, and then you buy it for £500, and then it breaks, and then you just chuck it away.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you talked about people not buying cars for cash anymore. When I was at the dealer where I get some of the cars on the Rawlins and the Bury St Edmunds, I was speaking to Tom, the sales guy there, and he was saying to me that people still do buy cars in cash, but it's generally the older generation.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, a holdout from A, people with savings, and B, people who that is how they operated. Most cars these days really are bought on finance, including the one I have as my daily driver.
So, funny story for you. It used to be very possible up until probably about 10-15 years ago to walk into even a main dealer and buy a car for cash, actual paper cash. But it turned out that a large German manufacturer, I think, did some maths on their own accounts and realised that some dodgy goings on were happening, and basically they realized that the Venn diagram of people trying to buy a 40 grand car with cash and people doing something illicit was just a circle. So I think they then brought in the rule that you couldn't put, I think, any more than like £1,000 down cash. And then I think they got to the point where they just said, no, we're not taking it anymore. And it was because all the dealers were doing dodgy things with the money. Or some of the dealers were anyway. And so, yeah. But now I think if you want to get into a basic car, you're probably talking at least about, I think probably really 1,500 quid. If you're not car literate and you're not savvy, 1,500 quid is probably your baseline. But the topic of today is the cars that kind of everybody knew and whether there's still pride. And I think part of this kind of pride in cars was the fact that, of course, when you don't buy it on finance, I think you view it in a very different way because your lifetime with that car could be a very long time. You know, I know quite a few people who the way they used to buy cars, and for some of them it's still true, but most of them it's not, they would go and buy a car, maybe not new, but nearly new. You know, you let that initial hit of depreciation come along and do its work. You buy the car with, 10, 20,000 miles on it, say, bit of warranty left perhaps, and then effectively you run it into the ground. You just keep going until it gets to the point where it's no longer economically viable. And I believe that is actually the most financially and environmentally responsible thing to do with a car. Just keep it going for as long as you can. But people don't do that anymore.
Well, at this moment in time, that's probably the plan with my Spring. Even though I haven't bought it on, with cash, I have bought it on finance. There's a part of me which thinks I might end up actually buying that car out when I'm done because the balloon payment is so cheap. It's like 3 and a bit, 4 and a bit grand, something like that.
Do you mean when you're threatened with divorce if you decide to keep it?
Yeah. My wife has got to the point where she's just accepted the fact that she gets ferried around in a Dacia Spring. She doesn't like it. She's not happy about it.
She really doesn't like it.
She really, really doesn't. It's quite funny because we went to me and my wife, we went to pick up the second Mini. Can we say that now?
Yeah, we can say that.
There's another Mini, and I found it on Facebook Marketplace. And I went and I did the deal on James's behalf. And as soon as I, shook the guy's hand and said, yeah, we'll have it, I could see the look of dread from my wife's face because it meant she had to drive the Spring home. And she actually sent a voice note, with me and to James saying, I'm really, what was something along the lines of, I'm just upset. And I hope you know I'm upset because I had to drive the Spring an hour home.
Yeah, she wanted me to know that she'd suffered, basically. However, I tell you what, that Spring, best piece of PR the Merc has ever had.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? It's weird. I am weirdly proud of that car, actually. I think it's because I'm really into what it is, not even the car itself, but what it represents.
Yeah.
To me, it represents cheap, sensible, back to basics, no frills, and I mean no frills motoring at all, which is cheap to own. £170 a month, no deposit is what that car, is to me, which is for me as somebody who is self-employed and needs a reliable vehicle. It is a little bit of calm in a sea of old Mercedes and Minis and whatever of yours I might be borrowing that week. And it's also really cheap to fill up on electricity. I think
it's really economical.
Massively. It does. I never see any less than about 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour.
That's really good. For some context, for those who don't speak EV,
yes,
particularly this time of year as it's getting a little bit cooler, your Porsche Taycans of the world will be getting about 2
at most.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that it is so economical to run, and I think I've paid less than £50 electricity this month, and I'm pretty sure I've done about 800 miles.
Excellent.
Which is, pretty good. And considering that's winter and the heater is on, that's cranking that up. It's basically half the cost to run as my diesel Golf was.
That's really, really good. Although, yeah, I'm going to be very keen to see what happens as it gets even colder, because you will notice the difference.
So am I. It normally, the range wise is when I first got it, was you'd get about 120 to 130 miles out of it. At the moment, it's basically 1% per mile, which is still not too bad for what I do, about 100 miles. But I think it's going to be down in that 80-mile range, which to be honest is fine, because I come here to my unit every day. I just plug it in and I go about my day. It's not actually a concern at all.
No, well, I've got an EV of a very different flavour being delivered today.
Yes, you do.
That's a Maserati Gran Turismo Folgore, which I think is Italian for lightning.
Oh, yes.
210,000 pounds and 760 horsepower of 3-motor, leather-lined luxury goodness. Does 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds or something stupid.
That's going to be worth 50 quid in a week, isn't it?
Yeah, probably, yeah. An electric Maserati.
Exactly.
It's like, that's built for the second owner.
Yes.
Honestly, I'm really hoping it's a good car, because I'm genuinely hopeful that someone out there will be psychotic enough to buy one new so I can have it second hand.
Yes.
Because I don't know, I just happen to think it's going to be a really good car. I could be totally wrong. I drove the Gran Cabrio recently, so the drop top, but with the combustion engine in it. And the V6 bi-turbo engine they've got, it's effective, but it's not very soulful. So I'm actually genuinely of the opinion, and I know not a lot of people feel this way, but I do, I would kind of rather have a solid EV powertrain as opposed to a lackluster combustion engine powertrain. Like, I would defend the engine in my F12 to the death, because that car is spectacular. And I think were you to take that engine out of it, it would lose its soul. But I actually think that, yeah, the bi-turbo V6 and the Maserati, like, it works. It's kind of like the engine in most Golfs. You're like, it's there. It's not really the star of the show unless it's, say, an R32.
Or a TDI.
Yeah. And a Golf is a car. Okay, so here's the thing. Let's talk about pride. I think when you talk to people about the cars that they remember most fondly and they were proudest of, I think it comes in two different flavours. One of which is it was that car where it was the realization of a dream. Something that they had promised themselves for a very, very long time. And maybe it had taken them 20, 30, 40 years to get to that point where they could go out and buy that car. And in that category, you've got stuff like the Jaguar E-types, Porsche 911s, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, all that good stuff, right? BMWs, the M3s, that sort of thing. To a lesser extent, I admit, but still, they're very aspirational cars. However, what I find really interesting is that when you talk to people and ask them what the best car they ever had was, and the car they remember the most fondly, it was very often not something that seemed particularly exciting or particularly amazing, but it was something that just did the job relentlessly, day in, day out, got you to where you needed to be, and you developed a real fondness for it. I mean, I know if I were to ask my mum, for example, if I said, right, I can get a time machine up and running, and we can pull from the past any of the cars you've ever owned, I'm 99% certain, sorry, Mum, if I get this wrong, because she does listen, that it'd be her Mini Red Hot. So, which is a random special edition. I think it was in about 1988, give or take, that it came out. And I know I've discussed it on the podcast before. They did two. They did a Red Hot and a Jet Black, and they were literally just plaques and stripes special, except I don't think they had either a plaque or a stripe. It was basically, here's a red one, here's a black one, here's a bit of a deal. And apparently the story that I'm told is that my dad was at work one day and he was on the first floor of this unit, and this car transporter pulled up outside, and on the top of the transporter was this red Mini. And Dad basically ran outside to say to the guy, like, where are you taking this to? And just phoned Mum and said, right, I've found you your next car. Like, that's what we're getting. And she absolutely loved it. Unfortunately, I then came along a little while later, and my pram wouldn't fit in it. So it had to go.
It's all your fault.
It is all my fault. Sorry, Mum. Dad's favourite, though, and he's had 911s, Ferraris. He had a McLaren for a little bit. He's had all sorts of very nice stuff. But his favourite, he always said, was his E36 generation BMW 320. He also had an M3 of that same generation, but it was the 320. I think, again, just because, that I think was the first time we as a family had an upmarket car. You got to remember, again, in the 90s, like having a BMW, that was quite special, and he had that, and you get the straight six engine in a 320 back then. So it makes that nice noise. It's smooth. It's wonderful. It's luxurious inside. Again, for the time, it's a big step up over your Fords and that. And it just did the job. It just did everything he needed for it. What would your parents say if we asked them?
Right. Okay. So I would say, knowing my dad, that I feel like he would love to have back his E28 M535i.
Oh, yeah.
Or the Carat du Châtelet Mercedes 300e.
Yeah.
I think he does talk fondly about that car as well, especially in more recent times since I've got my Carat du Châtelet Mercedes.
I was going to keep teasing him with yours.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. He had some, I think he might have had a Renault Alpine back in the day or something like that. Or there was some kind of thing. I don't think it was the major... I'm not sure what it was. He had some stuff in the 70s and 80s he talked about quite fondly, but I definitely think his BMW.
Should we get him on the podcast at some point? He's had some rock star cars, hasn't he?
Yeah, we should get him on here at some point.
should,
I think he'd like that. And my mum, she has never really been the biggest car person in the world. But I think a turning point vehicle-wise for her in the 90s probably would have been her E30, her little 316i. That's another car we all talk about in the family, kind of like with lots of love and adoration. And she enjoyed it. I loved that car as a kid. That was one of my favourite cars to go around the kid was my mum's E30 and my dad's E28. Those were peak childhood car years for me.
Did you know that there were special cars at the time?
I knew my dad's one was special because there was just something about the way it looked. It had the M stuff on it. It had all the leather, it had all the bits, and it had the badging, and it had the wheels. And I was looking around the rest of the street with their Sierras and Metros, Montegos, and Renault 5s and things like that, which are all fine cars. And then on the driveway is my dad's M535. And it was a few years old at that point. It was an 86, and this was in it's probably nearly 10 years. Actually, no, about 94 or 95 he got that, so just under 10 years old. But still then, that looked really special. And I think that car looked far more special and far more exciting than the E34 that followed it, in my opinion. Because the E34 got a bit more rounded. That was a generation of BMW I never really meshed with.
Really? I miss my E34 a lot.
Yeah, my brother had one. He had, I think, a 520i automatic, which he bought for a few £100 as well. And then the gearbox blew up a few months later, I think. And it was all right. It was comfortable, nice inside, but it just didn't do it for me like the E28 did. That kind of almost, it had that shark nose looking thing like the 6 Series from the time had as well. And I think it was just everything from the 80s. BMW was just like really special.
Yeah,
and so yeah, I would say that my mum would probably want her 316 back, but she's actually really smitten with her Spring because my mother has bought a Spring as well.
Yeah, the Extreme.
She's bought the Extreme version, and it's one of the first cars I've seen her own in a while where she's actually really enthusiastic. She has even joined the owners group on Facebook.
No.
Yes.
No. The shame.
Yes. And she keeps asking me questions about all the posts because I'm on there as well, and I have a little look, and it's very funny. But she's into that car, and I have a feeling that this car will probably be a bit special for her because she really likes what it's about. She likes the size. She likes driving. It's her first automatic, obviously first electric as well, and I've been trying for a decade to get her an automatic car because I love you, Mum, but you're terrible at driving manuals. You're awful at driving manuals. You've given me PTSD over the years from when she used to try and put the cars into reverse and in the BMW gearbox, and she'd slip off by smashing her hand on it to get it over the gate to get it into reverse and then whacking me in the leg.
She doesn't listen to the podcast, does she?
Do you know what? She would agree as well. You know, she would agree as well. She's not the biggest manual fan anymore. And yeah, she does great on the auto. I love you, mother, and I'm so happy you've got a car that's automatic.
Do you know what my mum drives? And actually, she is quite in love with this car.
Yeah.
She drives a Kia Picanto.
She does. I've seen that little thing.
Yeah.
And they look really cute. They look really fun.
I'll tell you what, I will have to borrow that offer at some point for you to have a go in, because I think it's just one of the most underrated cars out there. It's the previous generation now. They replaced it, I think, about a year or two ago. It's the Kia Picanto, and it's very specifically the GT Line S. So it's got, you know, nice like leatherish interior and stuff, and lots of toys and tech, and it feels like a much more modern and upmarket car actually than the VW Up equivalent. But it's got the 1 litre turbocharged 3-cylinder, I think, with about 100 horsepower and a 5-speed manual. And I tell you what, it's an absolute riot. You know, it's so much fun.
I just love small cars. I love my big stuff. I love my barges. But, you know, it's the same kind of thing with Spring when I bought that. There's something about a small little car that's so easy to navigate around country roads in town, that when you get it out and, you know, a little bit, there's a bit more open. Yes, it's not got loads of power, but there's something genuinely honest and fun about these little cars.
Yeah.
You know? And I like a 3-cylinder turbo as well. I really do.
I mean, it replaced a Nissan Duke, which is a Duke Nismo, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, which I really liked. You'll never guess what engine it has in it.
What's that?
It's the little 1.6, I think, shared with Renault, maybe, that's also like the BMW engine, notorious. For a second, I thought it was the same engine, but I don't think actually it is. But yeah, one of these engines, great when it works, but it has some problems. And I remember she called me one day and said, "Oh, I've got an oil light in the car. Can you come and fix it?" Yeah, of course, no problem. Took some oil over, topped it up. And then like a month later, she calls me saying, "I've got an oil light again. Can you come and top it up, please?" Like, yeah. And then there was a coolant light came up on it. And I was like, "Mum." And then I said to her, I was like, "Look, Mum, you know how you said that you were going to keep this car and basically run it into the ground? Like, I think maybe that's where we're at now, because it turned out that I think between two of my trips to go and top oil up, she'd also got a neighbour or someone else to put some oil in it as well."
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, "Mum, this car's taking oil every like 2 weeks.
It's worse than Ant's rotary.
It is. It's burning like a 2-stroke." So I was like, "Mum, just, you know, for the planet's sake, please." So I think that car was retired. And then she wanted a Seed, actually, because she quite likes the Kias.
Okay.
And then realised, actually, for her needs now, it was too big. So wound up with the Picanto, which she's absolutely smitten with, and rightly so, because they weren't. And I think that car was, I think it was like 15 grand, or no, it might have been a bit more than that actually, but not massive more. It certainly wasn't anywhere near 20 grand. And that's like your top of the line, fully loaded, everything with it, and your Kia 7-year warranty, all that good stuff. So she's going to keep it for at least like the 7 years. And it's just a wicked car.
I imagine that's a car she's proud of, actually, in some regards.
She really is. But it's funny, isn't it, that when we talked about some of these cars that our family are proud of, there's a lot of BMWs in there. And I think this all relates back to why it is now that people just aren't so proud in their cars. You see, it used to be, of course, and we're talking really 70s, 80s, and 90s for sure here, that there weren't actually that many cars on sale, you know, and you were probably either a Ford person or a Leyland person, and you might have been a Vauxhall, you know. So you had either your Astra or Cavalier, or you had your Escort or your Maestro or whatever. I mean, isn't it funny? Like, how many times did BL try and kill the Mini? And it just couldn't.
It died in like literally 2000, didn't it? That's when it died.
Yeah. Because all right, let's face it. I don't own a Rover, do a Metro 100. Do I own a Metro? Right, you know, and it's a 90. It's an R-Reg, isn't it? So it's 97. So it's the last of line. That was introduced in 1980 initially as the replacement, effectively, to the Mini, and then it was canned in 1997, and the blooming Mini limped on until effectively 2000. By which point it was 41 years old, and honestly, it just should have been replaced.
People
so
were
much
still
earlier.
buying them.
People were. I mean, it's just amazing. Like, that was a car. It's fascinating, isn't it? Like, the Mini is a car that's as old as my dad, yet when I was 10 years old, people could still walk into a showroom and buy a new one. I mean, that's never going to happen now.
No, regulations for starters. Well, they're ever changing, ever updating. These cars will just be outdated, and no, you won't be able to do that.
Yeah. So I think part of the reason that people, I think, were more proud of their cars is the selection was much lesser. There just wasn't that variety of cars on the market. I mean, crikey, a few years back, I went to an Audi launch, and I think they told us very proudly there's now something like 47 variants of Audi. Like, Audi alone, honestly, and that's not including, by the way, the different engines. That just like, here's the different models. We've got like an A1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever. And then you can have, there's hatchbacks, there's coupes, there's saloons, there's estates, then there's SUVs and crossovers in various different flavors. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Like, even for us car guys, it's hard now to keep track of what's out there. Whereas before you just go, what have you bought? If you go far back enough in history, you just tell people, I've bought the Ford. And there was only one. I got a friend in the States. He loves phoning his local Ford dealer to ask for parts. And he'll phone him up and be like, yeah, I need a model part for my 18 Ford. And they'll be like, yeah, which Ford? And he just goes, the. He's like, it's a 2018. He's like, no, 1918 Ford. Like, there was only one, I think, at the time. It's like, there you go.
That brings me on to the tales of A to B motoring.
That's legendary.
That actually really sums up how a lot of people felt. It was all about the badge, the GTI, the GLI, the SR, the SR,
gotta have an
CD,
eye. Yeah.
Exactly, stuff like that. And that was another thing. I think people were more proud about their cars because of the fact that people really paid attention to the badging. Now everything is an M Sport, everything is an S line, or the SY.
Well, they were proud about the badge on their car, and they were proud about the car because the car was a reflection of them. And I think we are now. I think in a lot of ways it was an incredibly toxic thing. It was awful, in so many ways. Obviously, great if your dad happened to have a GTI, because basically he was then level pegging with God, right? But if you were that poor bugger whose dad just came home with a Maestro diesel Clubman, then
that makes you want to cry.
Yeah, you'd have run away from home, right? But that was because the company car was still a thing. And the company car now, it still exists as a concept. But I think for a lot of people, as soon as the company car rules and regulations changed, and if you happen to be listening from abroad, basically, once upon a time, the idea was that rather than pay you more money, a company would give you a car because they effectively weren't taxed. And so the better paid you were, the nicer car that they would give you. Years later, over a sort of, probably about a decade or so, it changed quite dramatically. I mean, there was actually a wonderful period where there was a few cars you could buy. I remember this would be like mid-2000s, or mid to late 2000s, when the rules were changing and benefit in kind and that were coming in or being altered. I don't really do company cars, so I don't remember the exact dates. But you would used to see, like, the company car guys would drive stuff like a BMW 545i, like, highly specified, big engined cars, because it's all about the, like, yes, and make sure that badge is on the back, please, And then overnight, they all went into 320Ds. Because all of a sudden, the nicer car you had, that money was coming out your pay packet. So they just wanted the cheapest thing they could get away with, and suddenly they were like, yeah, 320D and take the badges off, please. Like, we just want to, carry on. And I think that has to be a large part of the destruction of pride in cars, because all of a sudden everybody was back on a level playing field, whether you were the brand new assistant or secretary, or you were the boss of the company, you didn't really want to pay any money to the taxman if you didn't have to. So you drove something, relatively quote unquote ordinary.
Yes, there's still maybe a little bit of that kind of stigma in companies, because I've got a friend who's a transport manager for a haulage and logistics and distribution kind of thing, and there is somebody that works there that is really upset because they had, when he came in, he made changes to go, look, people are buying all these different cars again, and it's ridiculous because they're just going to go into one manufacturer on the servicing plans. I think it might actually be JayEmm of all things, believe it or not.
Yeah, I do believe it. Yeah.
Yes, because they are the ones that are offering the best prices on everything, pretty much. And this other person is really happy because they basically have the same car as everyone else now. And how can they dare to have the same car as everyone else? And I'm like, you didn't really have anything that fancy before. I'm pretty sure it was a Kia before anyway.
Hey, I'll take a Kia over at JayEmm any day of the week.
No, I'll give you that.
The only problem is, particularly with JayEmm, and it's not JayEmm specifically, there are lots of new brands out there. I would personally, as a fleet manager, be very concerned about effectively turning the whole company's fleet over to a new and unknown brand. Because for all you know, there might be some description of design defect in these cars that means, oh, by the way, when they all hit 30,000 miles, this thing needs replacing. And it's going to be done under warranty. It's not going to cost you anything. But they might go, actually, we're really sorry, the parts are on back order from China and it's going to take a month to get them. Now, it could be completely the other way around. They could say, oh, we're really sorry about that. Here's a courtesy car. The thing will be 48 hours to get it fixed. You're good. But it's an unknown. You just haven't got a clue. And when you're going in with a new company, you don't know what's going to be around in 5 years. You don't know whether they're going to be good at standing by their warranty. You don't know whether they're going to be the kind of company that tries to, weasel out of everything that they can.
There is an element to that as to why I bought a Chinese-made EV from Dacia, because there's the dealer network of Renault and Dacia is one that is well established. It's a dealer network I already knew for several years in the other vehicles we purchased, and I was like, yeah, do you know what? Something might go wrong with this, and it does silly things sometimes. Like apparently, I trigger the emergency braking system every day when I'm like a whole light year away from another car, which is highly amusing because it thinks I'm about to have an accident when no, I'm slowing down for the traffic light. The car is there. Occasionally my cruise control goes, I don't feel like working today. And then 5 minutes later, it's like, okay, yeah, we're all good. Let's go.
This might be a stupid question, but does it have adjustment for the sensitivity of the collision detection?
I don't know. I think it does. I think I've got it on low.
Yeah. Because there's a little bit of road that I know, which is quite close to where you live, and it's a nightmare because you often get cars parked just on the street, and it's one of those bits of road where you as the human can see that there is absolutely nothing coming the other way. You've got like an 1/8 of a mile visibility, and you'll be obviously staying on your side of the road because there is a junction to your right up until you approach the parked cars, and you're going to go around it. But I have had a couple of instances where the car's gone, what are you doing, you madman? Yes, and it piles the brakes on. And of course, the poor bugger behind you could also see that there was nothing in the way, and therefore you had no reason to stop. And it's nearly caused an accident.
But what's weird about this is it only tells you, it doesn't actually pile the brakes on. If it's meant to, it isn't doing it.
Oh, right. It just goes, you might be about to hurt yourself, but honestly, I don't really care about you that much.
Pretty much. Pretty much, and that's kind of the way I like it. The safety switch off button gets pressed every time I get in the car, but that one stays on and shouts at me occasionally. But it's one of those things where like, yeah, I'll need to take it back to the dealer at some point for them to check it. But it's like I know they'll be able to sort it, and it doesn't bother me that much really anyway.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Exactly, exactly.
But here's the funny thing, right? So we talked a bit about BMW and that, and the company car, but and I think, unfortunately, I think there is a general sense amongst people now that the car is maybe almost a sort of a dirty thing. It's something that you don't talk about quite so openly anymore. And I think it's a real shame, because actually I think it's very easy to sort of think that people just don't like cars anymore, but they really do, especially if you happen to travel abroad. Honestly, I am utterly determined, like, to get you on you've not done a European road trip, have you?
I have not.
No, I am absolutely determined. I know there's reasons we haven't, but I'm going to work on you slowly, like a project, I will alter your mind, right? We'll get you on a European road trip, because I know you're absolutely going to love it, especially in the Merc, which, by the way, is just sensational. And honestly, it was so fun going over to, okay, all right, Le Mans Classic is a bit of a captive audience, but, you know, that is all of, like, let's just call it less than 10 grand's worth of, you know, classic Mercedes, right? And you will be somewhere with £1 million cars just everywhere. And still, the Merc gets so many admiring looks, glances, positive comments. Every time I've borrowed that car, just going out and about, people just have a thing for it.
They do.
And I think it's because it represents to people now that golden era when a car that, I suppose today, an E-Class Merc doesn't really seem quite so unusual. But back then, that's a 95 car. Back then, a Merc would be unusual.
Yes.
You know, just full stop. And a nice, you know, well-specified E-Class, you know, that's not the top rung, I think, of that model, but it was quite high up there.
It's got some good options ticked on it.
I mean, you got to remember, back then, Mercedes' idea of an option was the radio. By the way, that is an option in your car, the radio. If you didn't pay for it, you just got a blanking plate. But what happened was, people, obviously, once upon a time, had your Montegos, Mondeos, you know, all that sort of good stuff. Well, some of it was good. Because, again, a lot of people were fleet buyers. And if you weren't, you'd probably be a cash buyer. So your car had to be reasonably affordable. But then the luxury manufacturers, you know, which we are going to call, so your BMW, Mercedes, you know, VW and so on, they realised that they could sell cars on finance. And then it wasn't the case that, oh, by the way, if you want a BMW, it's going to be another £10,000 over your Ford that you don't have. Then it was a case of, if you want that BMW, you do know it's another like £40, £50 a month, which maybe you do have, or you're certainly willing to sacrifice for the sake of being able to say, I've got a BMW. And of course, because these brands had spent so long portraying this image of being just so superior, it almost didn't matter that for the same money, your equivalent, you know, Ford, Vauxhall, or of course the Japanese stuff as well, and French, you know, your Citroens, your Nissans, all that sort of stuff, that would have been way better specified. You know, better engines, better equipment levels, everything, compared with your BMW or Mercedes. But because the badge meant so much, people would go for it.
That's why you would see E46s with manual air conditioning occasionally.
Yeah, manual air conditioning, fabric seats. Mm-hmm. You know, you didn't get a lot in there. If you went and bought a Mondeo for that money, you got, like, you know, for the top of the line Mondeo was like low mid-range 3 Series money. But people went for the BMWs, they went for the Mercedes, they went for the Audis. They became popular, they became more successful. But as that happened, they became less special. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, we're in a situation now where I think if you say your dad's got a 320D, you go, yeah, cool, nice. You know, and that's really sad, because it should be special. Like now, heck, I even feel like having a Porsche isn't particularly special anymore. That may be the most elitist thing I've ever said in my entire life. But that's because when I grew up, your Porsche lineup was a 911, a 928, or a 968. Now, a 968, my dad nearly bought one of those, but it was actually, I think, more money than a BMW M3. And the Porsche had 4 cylinders and the M3 had 6, which is why Dad bought his E36. Now, of course, you've got the Macan, you've got the Macan EV, you've got the Cayenne, you've got the Boxster. You know, when I was young, the Boxster didn't exist, right? You know? And they just make so many more. I mean, now Porsche make, is it 200,000 cars a year or something? Whereas, you know, 30 years ago, they probably made not a tenth of that, but like a fifth of that. Weirdly, 911 production has actually been quite steady over the years. It's a bit bizarre. But they were really expensive. Yeah, they were really rare to see. You just did not see a Porsche. You know, I cannot remember growing up anybody that I knew who had a Porsche. One of Dad's friends had a Maserati, but I never saw it. Because every time he came over, I was like, is he going to bring his Maserati? And Dad was like, no, it's broke. Every single time, without fail, right? And I think it was a 3200. I'm sure it was a great car when it works, but that was never when I saw it. So yeah, I think this is the problem. Now we've got to the stage where there's so many cars and they all look quite similar, particularly from a manufacturer. I wouldn't expect people, even car people, to be able to identify every car or to know which ones are particularly special.
I used to be at a point where, 10 to 20 years ago, I knew nearly everything out on the road.
Yeah.
Like, because I didn't know. I was obsessed with Top Gear, Fifth Gear, things like that.
Yeah.
I wanted to know all the cars and all the manufacturers. I'm seeing stuff out there these days where I'm like, what on earth is that? What mishmash of every vehicle manufacturer out there am I looking at? I even think it is kind of in the higher end stuff as well. And I know you might think this is sacrilege. I was talking to you, and I've talked to you a couple of times about the 296, the Ferrari.
Oh, yeah.
I think from the rear, it just does not look good. I don't think that's the nicest looking Ferrari. I think it's probably one of the ones that seem very, very middle. It just seemed, I was saying it looked like, is it the 12C McLaren? There's a bit of that to it maybe somewhere. And it just seems like it's something you've seen before, whether I feel like all the Ferraris previously, 90s and kind of 2000s, they really were a visual evolution, where now it just looks like the same old crap from every other manufacturer. That might be harsh, but that's just how I feel about it, because I don't feel like that one looks as special. What was the one before it? Was it the F8?
Yeah, F8, yeah.
I think that looked better.
So the F8 was nice because it still had round rear lights. I think that's a thing. I think the 296 and all the Ferrari range is, I think, with cars, it's very difficult as you go along that you want to obviously pay tribute to the past of your company, but I think you also don't want to be stuck there.
Yes.
And there are some companies who very clearly had one successful car and now they're just stuck. So Jaguar, for a very long time, they just felt like they were constantly trying to remake the E-Type, particularly in the 90s with the XKs and so on and so forth. And it's like, look, lads, I know you like the E-Type and it's a cool car, but let's move on a bit. And to be honest, they did a very good job with the XK. Porsche obviously were sort of stuck with the 911, but very successful car. People like it. Ferrari, I think, generally did a fairly good job of actually evolving the model line. You're right. Yes, you can take if you took a 308 and an F8, they don't look really closely related. When you put all the steps in between, you go, I get it. It's like a poster at school you get of, like a bit of slime walking out the sea, and then, someone going off into space at the end of it. However, there are things also I think just cannot be changed. And to me, I was very upset with Ferrari when they ditched the quartet of rear lights and just went to two, like you get on, say, the F12.
Yeah.
And I know sort of why they did it, but also I look at it and go, but 4 rear lights is just cool. Do you remember when there are certain cars that if you see it at night, you know what it is.
Yes.
Like, also, by the way, if that trend of just fully illuminated grills at the front from side to side, can that please get in the bin now?
I hate that. That does my nut in. I think they look so gash and awful and tasteless.
Yeah,
that's just me. But I'm sure the 296 is a brilliant car. I watched the video that you did in it last night with good old Ben the Sparkle.
Oh, yes.
And it looked like you were having a sensational time. And it looked like, from inside the car and everything that was going on, it was probably the perfect vehicle for the moment, and nothing would have been better. Especially that bit you were saying when you had an electric mode, you had some music going, and it was just a core memory. But that car, I look at it and think,
I don't think you'd fit in it.
Probably not.
The GTB, you'd be fine. The GTS, it's just lost. I felt a little bit cramped in the cabin.
Yeah,
and you're taller.
You said you had to have the seat all the way back.
All the way back. Yeah. I think you'd need the buckets.
Yeah.
Like as an essential. So
I'll remember that when I'm speccing out my £400,000 Ferrari 296.
Hey, mate, never say never, right? But I think it is a shame that, you know what, it shouldn't take a Ferrari or something like that to have a car that people are proud of. But
No.
I think we've just got to this situation now where there are so many cars, none of them appear really to have much in the way of a personality, and they're just being bought now because, you know, they just make some numbers make sense, which maybe that's what we always did, but it does just feel to me like there isn't a car out there now that unites the people where you say, hey, I've gone and bought a Capri, and people are, oh man, yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, what'd you get? That 2.8, you know, or did you get the laser, or did you get this? It just doesn't happen. And the everyman, I think, is probably now just so bamboozled. It's like getting into Pokemon. When I was a kid, there was 150 Pokemon, and I could remember all of their names. Right now, and how many there are, I lost track.
And how many generations and shinies and evolutions and stuff like that?
Oh,
I don't know.
mate, don't. Honestly.
Well, I think as we're going to need to come to an end of today's episode, I would like to say the cars that we've been proud of from the ownership in our life. I will go with mine first. I think it was always my Volkswagen Transporter van, because that was my first vehicle that I drove after passing my test. I learnt driving. I did a lot of wrenching and working on that, and I had so many core memories as a kid with family and things like that, that was always a vehicle I was proud to drive and proud to park up and look at, even though it was an old van. And of course, my first BMW as well, which was my 318i. Yet again, it wasn't, you know, the fanciest BMW in the world, but, you know, from that era of like having a BMW meant something, you know, being ingrained into me. And it's still, even though it was like 13, 14 years old at that point, people were still going, wow, you drive a BMW at 22? And I'm like, yeah, I do. Even though, yeah. And I think the Merc is up there as well. That is a proud ownership, because obviously, you know, what it is, what it represents with friendship and everything. It's just so cool. You feel cool driving that car.
Cool as hell, that car.
What would you say the cars that make you feel proud? And I've got to say, one of them, I think, has to be the 550.
Yeah, it does, because, you know, it's... Okay, so actually, yeah, I talked earlier about you have either the cars that are like that realization of a dream, and
yes,
that is the 550 for me. Like, to just 100%, like, yeah, I wanted one or wanted to know what they're like since I was 7 years old when they came out. And to be able to not just own it, but find out that it's a great car. And also, do you know what? That's a time machine. You've driven it a little bit.
Yes.
You're like, it does take you, like the Merc does, to a different place, you know, and it's just wondrous. And there's a friend of ours is currently borrowing it at the minute, and he's having a great time as well. But as it happens, the other car that I have, which is actually a little bit the aspirational, but also the dependable element, was my E46 BMW 330ci Club Sport, because it was the first car I owned. It was the second car that I had, but it was the first car that I owned where it felt like a car I was proud of. You know, it had like 130, 140,000 miles or something on it when I got it. I put like another 30,000 miles on it. The only way I could afford one was I wanted the Club Sport because it just looked cooler, right? And I loved the color, the Estoril blue, and a little spoiler on the back, little carbon fiber bits at the front. But actually, it was just a normal 330 underneath. It sounded great. It went really well as far as I was concerned. Actually, they do go pretty well. And other than a couple of issues, like I had a starter motor fail, and I think the battery needed replacing. But honestly, that was, you know, the kind of both of those things. You can forgive it because of the age it was. I did like 30,000 miles with it in a couple of years or so. If that car came up for sale and I could find it, WJ05 HEV, I would have it back in a heartbeat.
So that was going to answer my next question. If there's a car from your past you can magic back, it'd be that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Because even like, look, the Evora means a lot to me. It's very special. But I think if I had the opportunity, I'd buy a different Evora. Whereas with the BMW, no, it has to be my one. If someone said, do you want us to buy another Club Sport? I'd be like, no, I'm right. Thank you very much. But my one, yeah, I'd have that.
I'd be the same with my silver 318i. I know it's very much dead because I got told it got written off by the owner who bought it off me at Great Yarmouth Seafront, showing off of all places.
Oh no!
Yes.
I'm going to check. I don't think that mine is dead. Last time I checked, it was still getting MOTs.
Yeah.
The mileage had been slowing down. But as far as I was aware, it was still of this world. Every now and again, I get an email, like every few years I get an email from someone that works out that they own an old car of mine, but it's been a long time since. Okay, so all right, drum roll, vehicle is sawn and the MOT expired actually a couple of weeks ago. Last seen advertised for sale in 2019 on 190,000 miles. So
that car is probably at the end of its life then at that
internet,
mileage.
find my old car, please. It's got to be somewhere. And I know people started asking big money for the Club Sports. It can't be worth that much on 190,000 miles. But if it's even vaguely savable, I would love to.
Yes.
Its monetary value is very low, but its sentimental value to it is high.
It's like mine. The only one I'd want back would have been my 318. I wouldn't want another 318. It would have to have been my 318. I mean, I used to have dreams about that car for about a decade after selling it. Nearly, it's weird that how that would happen. That was the car that I sold because I wanted to get into something else and try it, and I wish I'd kept. So that's my only automotive. I really must have it back.
Yeah, but tell you something, as much as it can sometimes feel like the general populace isn't as proud of their cars as they used to be, and I think that is true, there are still lots of people, including lots of young people, who are really proud of their cars, and I love seeing that.
Well, the guy that we bought the Mini off, he was 19, and he was proud of this one, but he also had, I think it was 2007, 2008 Mini, I think it was like a Clubman or something like that. It was the 1.4 diesel, whatever it was, the diesel thing, and he said that is the car he's proud of. He's keeping it forever. He never wants to let that car go, and that is his second generation, as said, Mini diesel. And that's somebody who's proud of their car from a young age, and hopefully he does get to keep hold of his car forever.
Well, good luck to him. So anyway, with that, please, if you are watching on YouTube, hop into the comment section and tell us what car you're most proud of, and maybe the one you'd like to have back if you could. If you are listening, though, don't forget you can email us on landlord@theradiatorarms.com. And however you either watch or listen to us, don't forget, we are here at 7 o'clock on a Monday morning, first on YouTube, followed a week later on all your usual audio sources. And in this episode, from myself and from Will, it's just a thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.